Welcome in to Take Command after a Commanders 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions at home here at Northwest Stadium. That's 5 straight losses for Washington, 4 straight by 21 or more. First team in the NFL to have that happen in 23 years. So now they head to Madrid. They got to get right. They got to figure this out, and they got to play a competitive ball game. They're 2-point underdogs against the Dolphins, who now have the same record as them after they upset the Bills today. But, Logan, let's look back at this matchup with Detroit. Lions score on every possession today. At one point, led 22-3. What'd you think?
Yeah. What do you want to start with the offense first? How are we going to handle this?
Big picture.
Big picture. So I think if we're going big picture, I think the one thing that you have to take away from this game specifically is just that the defense right now is struggling mightily. Like, there is some things offensively that I think you can be like, hey, that's good. That's good. Here's a formula. We had a solution versus thing. We expected the correct things offensively. We had a plan for that. And then defensively, I don't know if it's the injuries. I don't know if it's the scheme, the coach. I don't know what it is. They just don't have solutions. And I think that's the thing that is so incredibly frustrating for me watching. I'm sure for you as well, for fans, and I'm sure for the team. Like, they don't seem to have answers. And I was watching this game today, and I love watching offensive football, Grant. And they were never able to upset Campbell's rhythm as a play caller, quite frankly. Like, here's a first down run for 6 yards. Here's a nice little boot where we get the guy on the little flat, and it ends up being a 12-yard gain. And just like methodically dinking and dunking, finding explosive chunks occasionally. And it just they couldn't take anything away. And I think that was the thing that was so frustrating. And, we've covered teams for a long time. They've been able to find the occasional third down where they're able to get off the field. And that just was not on the table for them tonight. And I think it's just, I was talking to Fletch about, like, what do you do? What's the solution? And it's just to keep grinding, keep studying the tape, and keep working. I don't know if fans probably don't want to hear that, but I'm sure those guys in the locker room, that's going to be their approach.
I mean, there were possessions where, if you look at it, it's play 11 yards, 14 yards, 22 yards, 11 yards, 14, where they get a first down on every play, and then they score a touchdown. It's just too easy right now. Like, if I'm a fan at home, that's what I'm thinking. I'm willing to say too many injuries. It's going to be bad defensively. Like, I totally get that. And let's even say they have the worst injury situation in the league, which I would have to look that up.
Yeah.
But it feels like it, right? That said, it's been 20-plus years where a team's gone through a month like this, where there's just got to be a way to make it harder on teams. And I don't know what that is, but if I'm sitting at home listening to this, that would be my thought, I guess, is like, how do I make it so you don't score on every possession? How do I force a punt? How do I get a stop? Seattle was up 28-0 after 4 series. Detroit didn't punt the whole game today. Like, there's got to be a way between what they're doing and maybe being great. Like, there's a middle ground here with all these injuries where you go, okay, at least they're showing something.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stuck out to me, at least defensively, was like their inability to stop the run on first and second down really came to the forefront in this game as an issue because – I think I've seen Joe Witt Jr. over the course of the year come up with some relatively well-designed third-down pressure packages where they're able to capitalize on that. Like, Dorrance Armstrong was able to capitalize on that before his injury, obviously. And you say to yourself, like, why didn't we see any of that tonight? But we're not in third downs. We're not in third and longs very rarely. And they're just not able to capitalize on those moments. And I think that's the thing that comes to the forefront in terms of being incredibly frustrating is if you can't win first and second down, you can't earn that right to find those explosive defensive plays on third down. And so it's run fits and Fletch, because he's such a smart guy, brought this point up. It's like when you lose that heavy-handed edge setter in Dietrich Wise, you lose that solid edge setter in Dorrance Armstrong, and now you have a bunch of penetrating, attacking defensive ends. When you play a team that runs outside zone, all of a sudden those edges get really wide, and those penetrators create creases. And so I think you're seeing a little bit of that, like kind of as the roster has disintegrated, the initial plan has it's become non-tenable. And I think that's the thing that it's like with the personnel now, it's almost like they need to install a new defense to make it fit the new people that they have in the building.
I want to double click on that in a second. In terms of sacks, there were 0 today. Jacob Martin almost had 1. There were 5 hits on Jared Goff, 2 by Martin, 1 by Von Miller, 1 by Sheldon Day. And then Bobby Wagner was credited with 1. Martin actually forced a throwaway where he had Jared Goff wrapped up. Otherwise, like, there were 3 defended passes. Jonathan Jones had a pass breakup at the goal line on a defended play, frankly, on a deep shot. Frankie Louvu had a batted ball at the line of scrimmage. That was a nice leaping play, I think, on a third down to force a fourth down. Well, just like the moments, the splashes, the look back, and it's like, oh, there's a really positive play on defense. Like, it's really hard to find those. Is there anything that stands out when you think about, like, good individual effort there by this guy?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, but again, it's stuff that seems like so normal,
right?
Like there's a tackle,
it's just the expectation. Yeah,
like there's a tackle by Bobby in space on Jahmyr Gibbs, which I thought was a great job by him. There's a tackle on Bobby on a run fit where he's playing back and makes it, makes a nice fit there. There's a couple Kinlaw pressures where he's kind of pushing the pocket back, gets his hand up, and Goff does a little bit of an escape. And so there's stuff that sticks out to you like that, but there's nothing in any amount of volume. I thought the Jonathan Jones PBU was excellent. I thought he had some really nice coverage moments. There's the ball that Williams catches on the sideline, but he's right in his pocket there. And I even thought the coverage there didn't distribute badly. I thought Frankie Louvu got good depth. I thought Jones was at a good spot. And that's one of those ones where you kind of tip your hat to the offense and say that ball couldn't have been put in a better spot. I think I'm okay with that play happening because everyone seemed to be executing appropriately. It's the other stuff where, it's the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown at the end of the game where I know that's kind of a funny look and back offset away from the strength. You're thinking run across the formation. They go same side pitch, get two guys out. We get a guy out of their gap, and it's a crease for 44 yards. And I think Fletch articulated this beautifully on the broadcast when he's like, yes, that's a tough run to defend. And maybe it's a 10-yard gain, 12-yard gain, but it should be a 44-yard gain. And I think those are the things that are just hard to reconcile in these moments immediately after the game.
You said something there, too, that sticks out to me, which is a guy out of their gap. There's too much of that on this defense still. And with the run fits, particularly up front, it's not clean enough. And if you're going to be undermanned and you're going to be playing with backups, like then doing your job becomes that much more important and not playing hero ball, which Joe Witt talks about it. When you get creased by a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, it's curtains.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the view from the corner angle of the press box, and you could kind of see the moment he had speed at the second level, it's night-night. Like, you're not catching up to him. This is a guy that's got like 230 rushing yards against them in 2 games dating back to last January. Corner, they suffered more injuries because they played a game, obviously. So, I mean, that's just been that kind of year for them.
Isn't it? I was thinking about it, like, at one point Fletch goes, is number 34 in the game right now? And it's not nickel. And I look out and it's like, it's Hamilton. He's in the game, right?
Yeah.
With no Igbenogany, who didn't dress last week. Those
Correct.
guys did not dress last week for this team. And they are playing over half of football.
So Jones gets hurt at one point and Amos gets hurt at one point. And there's only so many corners you have dressed, right? So they didn't have much of a choice. But I guess I bring this up to say, what did you think of the early decision? Jones on the boundary, keeping Mikey Sanders still inside in the nickel. Obviously a tough assignment with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but we speculated as to what they would do. What did you think about the decision?
Yeah, I actually like the decision, and it's partially because of how we've talked about this on the show, how challenging it is to play nickel and all the stuff that you have to negotiate as a nickel football player, like run fits, coverage responsibilities. And I don't want him, Mikey, I'm talking about, to have to think about anything else, right? I just want him to be able to focus on that. So when, I was talking with Fred Smoot earlier this week, he was mentioning like, oh, maybe on first down, Mikey plays the perimeter and, you kind of have him in. I just thought that's going to be a lot for the young guy to kind of have to keep and manage, especially when there's times where you can tell that he's made some mistakes mentally in terms of coverages, and I think, there's that 4th and 1 conversion where they are in a kind of tight bunch. They motion out, they expand. No one has number 3 in the coverage and ends up being an easy completion for, I think it was a 12-yard gain, if I remember correctly. And so obviously there's still some mental friction for him at that position. And again, I think he's a good player. I think he's been one of the more dynamic, explosive players in terms of creating turnovers, which is great, but he's still got a lot to learn and still developing. And I think I want to help that development as much as possible. Like I think about Ron with Quan when he was here, and Quan was playing safety, strong safety, nickel, big nickel, and he just never was able to develop. And since he's been at safety, you can tell he's kind of found his feet a little bit and developed. So that's kind of what I'm hoping here for Mikey, I guess.
Take command, Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen. We're at Northwest Stadium after a 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions. Washington's defense in this game, which we're discussing, gave up 546 net yards, 8 yards per play, 226 on the ground, 320 through the air. Goff 3 touchdowns and a 135 rating. Gibbs runs for $140. Montgomery goes for 70 on the ground. So you were just saying a couple of minutes back, based on all of the injuries and just the personnel drop off, which, again, if people want to be cynical, that's fine. I think sometimes excuses are also explanations, right?
Yeah.
I'm not condoning or saying it's okay to be this bad, but I also think it's realistic to look at this and go, okay, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So that said, you talked about maybe like changing the way they're doing things or running a different defense. What do you mean by that? Like a different base defense, or
I think it's just,
what do you do?
I think it's just saying like we came into this season, we wanted to be a blitzing, downhill, aggressive man coverage team, and right now we're on our 4th and 5th corner, right? We're on our 2nd string safety, right? We are we're banged up on
3
the
edges.
Yeah, we're banged up on the defensive line. Payne didn't play today, so
got ejected.
Yeah, so like what are we gonna do? To now we can't. I don't think we can play man coverage the way at the same volume we wanted to before. So, what do we want to major in now? What's going to be our home base? What's going to be the thing that we can call versus anything, and we're not going to mess it up. We use any run and not mess it up. And I think that's changed honestly. And that's all speculation on my part. And you'd have to ask Joe Witt Jr. about that. But just looking at, look at the offense is a good example. Look how much that has changed from the first game of the year with the injuries. And it's much more easy to see with the offense because of the personnel restrictions. Defensively, it's a little bit more amorphous, but I think that's kind of what you're looking at here. Like what is our home base now? Who are we now, given the personnel limitations? And I think actually, to give Joe Witt his flowers, I think last year he did a great job changing that. I think he wanted to be a man coverage guy. As the year went on after the Tampa Bay game, they said, we're going to be more zone, we're going to play softer coverages. And it worked out for the most part because the offense was able to support them. Here, like, what are we now is the question.
So, and that to that point, okay, I'm just thinking of the perspective of like a fan who's sitting here in the rain watching this game today.
And let me just say this before you started. Like, there's nothing I'm going to say now that's going to make you feel good.
Oh, no, I don't even mean that.
Okay.
I'm saying in terms of shifting this defense, what do they do well right now? And I'm not even trying to be flippant or a jerk.
No, I know
I'm saying if I'm a coach,
it's a great
the first thing I do is go, okay, what can I hang my hat on? And I start from there and I kind of build off of that. So like I've kind of been racking my brain and I'm wondering like, what is that calling card right now? Or if there isn't one, obviously they got to figure something out, but like maybe that's telling too. Early in the year, they were not giving up much in the run game. And then as Wise goes down and the run game changes, like interior up the middle, Payne and Kinlaw and those guys, they're a little tougher to run on downhill than outside. You saw that with Gibbs versus Montgomery today. Is that it? That maybe you're physically capable of holding up straight downhill? Like what do they do well?
I think that's the thing that makes this show so challenging, quite honestly. It's like looking – I don't have the film here to kind of confirm. It's just my emotional response to the game. And in this game, I'm not sure – I'm not sure I could give you an answer, right? Like we were talking about, like here's a tackle by Bobby Wagner. I forgot to mention this, but on the second field goal, Quan Martin does a great job in man coverage on Jahmyr Gibbs on the choice route, forces a throwaway by Golf. Like there's just not enough plays, and so like it's a coach said this to me once, like sometimes you want to get in the X's and O's. It's the Jimmys and Joes, and here I think it's a combination of both, and so that's why I said we got to figure out what it is, what we can do, because I don't look at anything and be like that is the thing that they're really good at. Like that is their home base. Like for a while I personally thought it was like, hey, they do a really good job in 3rd and long of disguising their pressure packages and getting from cover 2 to man coverages and bringing pressure out of that look. And we just haven't seen that from them because they haven't been in a lot of 3rd and longs since that game against the Chargers. So in terms of answer, like maybe that's something we can do later this week. And I can say like, this is something that really sticks out to me as something they do well. But as of right now in this moment, after watching that game, nothing specifically comes to mind.
Right. And so that's why we do the tape breakdown, which you should come back for in 2 days. On Tuesdays, we do a tape breakdown. On Thursdays, we have a pod for you looking ahead to the upcoming matchup, watching the tape on Miami. They actually beat the Bills and blanked them for the better part of 3 quarters today. Looked really, really good. So they're the matchup coming up now in Madrid. I want to shift to the offensive side of the ball. And this will sound kind of funny, but there was actually a lot of things I liked about the offense today. Mm-hmm. Notably, the vertical passing game returned or showed up. You know, you had 37-yard completion to Treylon Burks, who showed size at 6'2", 225 on the sideline to go get a football. Zach Ertz made a nice 30-yard catch on a beautiful ball kind of dropped over top of a defender. He made an athletic grab. Jalen Lane, I've been begging for the shot to Jalen Lane down the field. You get him on a post winning inside. He gets a 41-yard completion. Debo finally down the field a little bit, caught a 19-yard ball on the sideline. Very different looking offense than the first few weeks that kind of went through Debo, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But Marcus Mariota didn't turn the ball over, 2 touchdowns, a couple hundred yards. They scored 22 points. They've been averaging 14 the last 3. Things opened up in the passing game a little bit, surprisingly enough, because they still couldn't run it well. Bill was 2.7 a pop. Rodriguez was 2.7 a pop. Their running backs were a combined 22 for right around like 70 or something. But they did finally get some things pushed down the field.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the runs, there's not all kind of, under 3 yards to carry are the same. And when I look at Chris Rodriguez specifically, I thought he did a really good job of keeping the offense on schedule. So getting you to 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7, and keeping some of the offensive playbook open to you.
Brian Robinson-ish.
Yeah, right. Just kind of getting your pads square and running hard and pushing the pile. And people say, well, is there value there? I'll tell you right now, like one of the first things that Kyle Shanahan said to the backs is like, keep me on schedule. Allow me to be in this play action mode. Allow me to insulate the offensive line. I think you saw a little bit of that tonight, which is one of the reasons the offense felt the way it did. And the other thing I loved about it is 13 personnel. We were able to kind of create some space toward the sideline just by formation and kind of bring it in. We're able to find some solutions versus man-to-man coverage, which I thought was great, because those condensed formations, they couldn't press us the same way. So I think there was a lot of things that stuck out to me as positive. Like I felt like the Cliff and the offensive staff understood exactly what Detroit wanted to do. They had a solution. The solution was effective. And then obviously there's some statistical variance in terms of finding these explosive plays down the field. Like, there prior to this, like Jalen Lane drops an explosive pass, or we get blanketed in coverage. But it's nice to see Traylon Burks separate. It's nice to see him make a contested catch. It's nice to see Debo make a play for this offense in a contested catch situation. So I look at those moments and I say, I thought the plan was effective. I thought it was relatively well executed. That you got plays from the receivers in the moments that they could make plays. Cliff didn't ask too much of that group. I thought Mariota delivered the football effectively. And I think if you're playing a better brand of complementary football, you probably feel much better about the offensive performance. And then the other thing I'd say, if there's one criticism to Levy, it's that they were ineffective on 3rd down. And when the defense is struggling like that, I think you just got to be more aggressive in those situations, a little bit more aggressive on 4th down. Just try to possess the football to limit the Lions' total possessions.
Yeah, 2 for 10 on 3rd down, which meant too many times you're giving the ball back to them when your defense can't hold up. And you use the word Levy. The Levy broke defensively, because you couldn't stay on the field there. It's interesting because I think of all the positives of the offense in terms of the passing game, and it was sub 290 yards. It was 5.6 a play. So it was definitely more like flashpoint moments than consistently moving the ball.
But we haven't seen that from them, really.
We have not, and I've been waiting for it. And it's a huge deal, I think, because if you can now mix that in a game where you're in it, and you get the big explosive, that can change the game. Also, Traylon Burks, former 1st-round pick.
You saw it tonight.
You did. Like, you could see why this guy was taken in the 1st round at his size, making a couple of athletic plays, 3 targets, 3 catches for 58 with the 37-yarder, a couple of early contested catches, kind of boxing people out like he's getting a rebound. He looks great in uniform, bro. Like,
he looks big.
Off the bus first.
And so, he's been here, what is this, his 3rd week or 4th week? And
it's nice his 2nd game really being involved.
Yeah, nice to see him coming along in that way. And it gives me a little bit of optimism that, while Terry, while Noah are out, they found somebody who could find some of these plays in the offense, catching the football in those contested moments, a guy we can take a shot with. Like, that was a great go ball. DB's roughing him up, being physical. He's able to push through the contact, get by, make a tough catch. That's what this offense has been lacking. Like, that's a 3-by-1 look. That's in those moments, like they want to take that shot down the field. Think Terry last year. Think Noah Brown a couple times. OZ had a couple of those shots down the field, and we just haven't had that tool in the toolbox. And here's this guy who's maybe finding his legs enough for them to utilize that element.
I also forgot they took a deep shot to Robbie Anderson too.
Yeah,
he didn't catch it. It was an overthrow. But add that to the pile in terms of what's been missing, and even the attempts weren't really there. Maybe they didn't feel like they could hold up in pass pro. I thought for the most part this was better in that regard too, because remember last week the big story was Jaden got pressured on 50% of dropbacks, 60% in the second half. I think some of that was Seattle, frankly.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw, but was up 35-7 in the first half this week.
Seattle's it's one of those things that's hard to articulate without the tape, but that defensive line is really, really, really good. That defensive front's really good. And I think that's one of the better defenses in football. I think we talked about that on the Command Center or the Take Command show when we talked about it. So this is a different animal, and I think you see when you're playing with a more normal defense how this offensive line can. And again, I think you got to give credit to Cliff here in terms of how he called the game and how he insulated that group.
Here's something I wanted to point out for Cliff. Twice on the goal line, they got wide open touchdown looks, which feels like you schemed something up pretty well. Debo, with nobody around him, caught a touchdown pass. And then on the other end zone later in the game, the Ben Sinnott touchdown
really well designed.
Was nice, almost not quite like Spider 2-eye banana, but kind of that type of look where you got the fullback going downhill and kind of into the flat, but nobody was in the vicinity. So just want to tip my cap to Cliff a little bit because sometimes you watch these games, it's super hard. You're inside the 5 and it takes 3-4 plays and it's 4th and goal and you get stopped. I mean, they got down there and a couple of times just got guys naked open, which was good to see.
It was great to see, and it wasn't quite Spider 2-wide banana, but it's a tight zone to the offensive left. Quarterback turns his back to it, and the great thing about it is they had set that run up about 4 times prior to that, where he's coming back and sifts in the end, closes like a lunatic. Mariota breaks contain, send it outside. It's exactly how you draw it up. It's well sequenced in terms of like you set it up, and then in this critical moment, you get the great execution, and you get Ben Sinnott wide open for a touchdown.
What do you think this is like behind the scenes now for this staff? I mean, last year they were 12-5, won playoff games on the road against really good teams like this one, and got to the NFC Championship game. And now, I mean, each week they're not losing; they're losing really badly, and a lot of it is just you're not going to fix this right now. Like, if you're Dan Quinn, if you're Cliff Kingsbury, if you're Joe Witt, what is that like right now, do you think?
It's tough, man. I mean, it's really tough. And I think for lesser people, it's impossible to deal with. But I think one of the things that I've always respected about Dan is he knows how to handle this and kind of be the same guy every day, which is why he's in the big chair, right? It's for moments like this. So I would just say it's extremely difficult. Want this to go this way. They want to win football games. And so I think it was cool to see elements of this team. But the special teams did some great stuff tonight. I thought there were elements of the offense that looked really good that were striving and kind of working to overcome some of the adversity. And that's what you want from this staff. And I know I didn't mention the defense there, but I know Joe Witt Jr. is working on that with his staff to kind of find solutions. It can be hard when you're outgunned this way, and I think, but I do think despite the difficulties, like the one thing I love about Dan, he's been very consistent. It's like we are process driven. We're going to keep striving to get better, and we're going to keep working to get better. And that's really all they can do.
I wonder if a trip to Madrid now, the injuries are still the injuries, and they have major flaws, obviously. But if something like this comes at a time where, especially it's a winnable game, it's going to be close to a pick'em. You're playing Miami, you're not playing the Chiefs or anything, right? If it's bonding in some way, like it's a long trip.
Well, they said that, right? They said that like one of the things that organized the roster last year was the trip to Cincinnati, then down to Arizona, where they spent the week.
They were there for like a week.
Yeah, and so I think maybe you're right. Maybe this is a good opportunity to say, hey, get away from the distractions, get away from kind of the.
It's a good week to get out of town. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people writing and saying things about kind of the state of the union, and you don't have to hear any of it.
Yeah, and again, like it forces you to build relationships with guys that maybe you wouldn't. And again, talk about needing it. Like this team, like how many people are brand new to the team, like brand new in big roles. Like let's give them opportunities to connect and get together. Because they definitely need some type of reset and refocus, and hopefully this provides that.
5 straight L's for the Commanders. They're 3-7. Next up, the Dolphins in Madrid. So we will do our tape breakdown pod and then a preview pod, 3 a week on Take Command. Logan Paulsen played a decade in the league, chops it up as a analyst on the film and giving you some player perspective better than anybody in town. Grant Paulsen with you as well. You can check me out on 106.7 The Fan from 2 to 6:30 every day. Thank you for listening and watching Take Command. You can always stream us on YouTube, 106.7 The Fan and Team 980, or listen wherever you get your audio We're back on Tuesday.